Welcome back to Blooming in Brisbane. This week's plant of the week is a really exciting new release for all gardeners out there in southeast Queensland. This is a brand new agapanthus. It's called Gold Strike, and it has the most amazing variegated foliage, which is very attractive just in itself. But on top of that, every spring and summer it will produce bright, almost electric blue flowers high above the plant itself. So this plant's only going to get to about 50 centimetres high and about 50 centimetres wide. It's not going to be a giant one like such as the old forms, but even when the plant's not in flower, the most important thing to remember, it's going to give you bright colour and interesting texture to have in the garden. Look out for it in your garden centre. Agapanthus are really tough plants that you can use all over your garden in full sun or light shade. So look out for it. I'm sure it'll make a wonderful acquisition for your garden.
Today I'm going to talk to you about creating your own cheap, easy to make fertiliser for your garden. Now, we've all heard about worm farms and all the wonderful resources that come from that. Compost heaps are great, bokashi buckets even, but if you're really wanting a quick liquid feed for your garden, sometimes if you've got a large garden, it can be quite an expensive venture when you've actually got to go out and purchase it. So knowing how to make your own liquid fertiliser can not only be great for your garden, it can help in recycling and your sustainability, but also it can save you a lot of money. So today I've already started off with actually putting a whole big lump of compost, homemade compost, into this bucket. Basically just getting a stick and basically stirring it around, and you can let that steep for a couple of hours or even a couple of days if you want. Now, if you want to be a little bit more tricky, you can actually make a compost or manure tea bag, and that's using like a Hessian bag and actually putting the manure or the compost inside there and then a stick across it and actually let it dunk in and out like that. I haven't done that today. I've actually just popped it in here. And what I'm then going to do with our compost that's been steeping in here for a little while, I'm actually just going to use a strainer and strain it off into this bucket and then straight into a watering can ready to go onto the garden. So it's easy enough to do. I strain it off because you can then reuse that compost into building up a new vegetable garden, or if you want, you can actually just reuse it again to get some of that wonderful nutrient out of your compost and in the form of a liquid fertiliser. Now, you can dilute it down to the colour of weak tea, but I find that really liquid compost won't burn. You don't have any trouble with it burning. The liquid manures, depends on what type of manure you're using, whether you're using cow manure, chicken manure, mushroom compost even. Horse manure I find doesn't give you a lot of nutritional value, but those other manures, you might want to sort of, depending on how fresh they are, you might want to actually dilute those down a little bit, just so they're not too strong. So as you can see, it's just straining through there. This compost is going to be left behind in the strainer, and that's fine. While that's doing that, there's a few other options as well. So compost tea, liquid manure. You can also use a fabulous herb called comfrey, and you can use that in a bucket, just straight into the bucket, and let that steep for probably about a week. Keep in mind though, it's going to kind of break down and get a bit anaerobic, so try and stir it at least once a day. I tend to find when I'm having those buckets sitting there stewing away, creating liquid fertiliser for me, I prefer to put a lid on them because it just stops mosquitoes hopping in there and breeding. So comfrey is another one. It's a fabulous herb that draws a lot of nutrients up from the subsoil, and you can utilise those nutrients by basically making a sort of a tea soup out of it and straining it off. Even if you've got a whole pile of weeds in your garden, you can even utilise those. Same thing, they can go straight into a bucket, fill it up with water, let it steep for a week or so, stirring it every day again with the lid on. Take the lid off each time you need to do it. Once again, you can strain those off as well. So you can turn your weeds into fertiliser. It's as simple as that. So this one here has finished straining off. I'll just sit it into that bucket, have my watering can ready to go. See if I can spill this everywhere. But basically you can then, as you can see, it's a lovely brown colour. Pour that straight into your watering can. Probably a good idea if you don't have a funnel or something, you can do this over an area where you don't mind it spilling a little bit. And as you can see that there, that's not too strong. And basically there you go, you've got 5 litres or 10 litres of liquid fertiliser ready to go for your garden. And you can imagine just how much liquid fertiliser you can get if you've got a whole compost bin, or even if you go and buy a bag of cow manure for sort of, $5 or $10, you can all of a sudden imagine just how much liquid fertiliser you can get out of it. It's that easy. Hi, today I'm here in Sue's backyard and we're having a little bit of a look at her pomegranate and some of the things that appear to be not possibly going right. So Sue, what seems to be some of the problems that you're finding with your pomegranate harvest or lack of?
Well, it starts off getting lots of lovely red flowers, and then I hadn't really worried too much about them, just watered the tree and kept it going. But then I found as the fruit developed, then they were getting stung with the fruit fly.
Yeah.
But by the time I realised this, they were well and truly stung.
Yeah.
Then with all the rain, the fruit has split.
Yeah.
And so
what are you going to do about it?
what am I going to do about it, and what
Okay.
do I need to do next time I see the flowers?
All right, so you can see some of these pomegranates here have got a few little sort of sunken in rotten spots, and that's where the female fruit flies come along and stung and laid her eggs with inside the fruit, and then the larvae hatch inside there and eat away and kind of basically cause the fruit to rot from the inside. Now there's not a lot you can spray. You could try things like Eco Naturalure, but I find that the best way of dealing with fruit flies, especially if you can take the time, is actually by using exclusion bags. And you can get those, they're small netting bags or even some of the paper bags, but the small netting bags last better in the weather, and you can cover the fruit with that and tie them up and zip them up onto there. Now you need to do that as soon as you see the fruit start forming. Can't wait till they're getting a bit of size on them because the fruit fly's already been and gone. So try and do that as soon as you see the flower finishing and the fruit start to form. Grab some exclusion bags and tie those on to cover the fruit up. With the splitting though, there's not a lot you can do. It's just been unfortunate that the weather has been extremely dry, and then we've had an awful lot of rain all of a sudden, and it can happen to all sorts of fruit, including citrus, where the fruit will then just split. It's too much. All of a sudden there's an excess amount of water and it causes the fruit to basically the cells to burst. What you can do though is during really dry times, try and keep the water up to them so that they're not getting that massive sort of fluctuation between dry and then an onslaught of excessive moisture. So next year, flowering, fruit starts, bag them, and if we're going through an extended dry period, even though pomegranates don't mind the dry, being a Mediterranean fruit tree, just maybe some sort of, regular waterings to cope.
Okay, thank you for that.
No worries. One part of an urban garden, what would it be without chooks? There's obviously a very important part of your backyard sustainability plan. What can you tell me about your chickens?
Our chickens get fed from all 5 units, so we're diverting waste from landfill, and they actually provide us with beautiful eggs. And what actually makes the eggs really tasty is this state-of-the-art technology. It's actually maggot tin grower. So we put the meat scraps in, and flies will get in, lay eggs, maggots crawl around, and as they crawl, they fall through, and chooks actually eat them. So it's extra protein for them, which makes eggs really tasty.
Yeah, sounds terrible, doesn't it? But it's true. I mean, that's where chickens dig. They get a lot of insects out of the ground, same as they would get maggots or fruit fly larvae. It's a great idea.
So great source of omega-3.
And you've got them free ranging here underneath what, a macadamia nut, tropical plum.
This area wasn't well utilized. Even grass didn't grow here. So great spot for them to run, and they also actually composting stuff for us. They turn it around and they add extra fertilizer, so you don't need to have a compost heap and turn it around. They do that for you.
And all the green waste can go straight into them, and they'll turn it into fertilizer and feed and eggs. That's
and
fabulous.
Back to garden.
Excellent.
I hope you've enjoyed our final episode of Season 2 of Bloomy in Brisbane, and thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to thank our presenters Noel Burdett, Jill Coombe and Claire Bickle. Without you three, we definitely couldn't have made the show. I'd also like to thank Jake and Anka two dear friends who loaned me their equipment and also their time. To all the wonderful memories of visiting such passionate gardeners around our town. Thank you so much, it's been a wonderful experience, and I look forward to seeing you all in Season 3. In the meantime, keep in contact with us on our Facebook page, Blooming in Brisbane, or for Noel Burdett, visit Noel Burdett Growing Gardens and Claire Bickle Gardening. I leave you now with more treasured memories of Season 2 of Blooming in Brisbane. This has been a Dare to Bloom production.